During those days, I was pursuing a master's degree in computer programming and feeling overwhelmed, so I decided to take a stroll in the art gallery to clear my mind. While exploring, I ran into Janet. We had grown fond of spending time together. Janet was always supportive of my career and academic endeavors. After successfully graduating from school, I proposed to Janet, and I was working at a successful company. Everything was going wonderfully. However, Janet had changed significantly after our marriage. It seemed like she had lost interest in me. She was constantly engaged in parties and shopping, growing distant from me. We discussed this issue after our first year of marriage, and we decided that Janet should start working. She began to show interest in me again and came home happier from work. Months passed, and Janet started acting cold towards me once more. Her behavior was taking a toll on me. Our arguments had increased, and it felt like being with me was unimportant and bothersome to her. Janet never fully explained herself to me and didn't talk much about her life. I hadn't questioned her much either. With each passing day, my patience was running thin, so I asked a friend of mine to keep an eye on Janet at her workplace. I also started digging into Janet's past. I discovered that Janet had a history of dating older, wealthier individuals, and that she wasn't the calm and kind person she appeared to be. This information troubled me, but I still hoped that our marriage might have changed her. Days later, I received a call informing me that Janet had met someone after work, which was the reason for her coming home late. This shattered my last remaining hope. I was waiting to find out who Janet had cheated on me with. She had become consistently late coming home and distant towards me. I suspected that she had used me enough. When my friend called me and revealed the person she had cheated on me with, I wasn't surprised at all. She had been involved with her boss, which was quite amusing. Had she ruined our marriage just for more money? I asked my friend to take photos as well. Not long after that, Janet expressed her desire to move out and live in separate homes. She claimed that she couldn't sustain this marriage and wanted to part ways. Did she think I was a fool? Could I be deceived by such words? I gave her what she wanted and she left the house. Janet's boss was named Malcolm, and when I learned he was married too, I thought I should talk to his wife. My work life was going to be quite hectic for a few months, so I put this matter on the back burner for the time being. When I returned home from work one day, I saw divorce papers on the table and signed them. The divorce process took about a month, but during that time, I heard that Janet had plans to marry Malcolm. I asked my friend for Malcolm's wife's address, and I sent her pictures we had taken, along with a note containing my contact information. She didn't reach out to me for a while, so I lost hope, but she eventually messaged me, and we decided to meet at a cafe. I went directly to the meeting place after work. Hannah had arrived early, and her unhappiness was evident on her face. Initially, she thought I had reached out to blackmail her, so she came to warn me. I asked her if she wanted to divorce her husband. Hannah confessed that she was very unhappy and acting rich to avoid divorce. She expressed her fear that if she divorced her husband, she would end up penniless and on the streets. She also mentioned that Malcolm's lawyers were formidable, leaving her feeling helpless. I told her we could seek revenge and that we had evidence on our side, assuring her that she could win with the strong lawyers from my company. Hannah provided the lawyers with the photos we had and was prepared to take everything from Malcolm. Her self-confidence had grown. Malcolm, relying on his wealth, didn't put up a fight in the case, which worked to our advantage. Janet and Malcolm had started preparations for their wedding, thinking that everything would go as they wanted. Due to the case and the wedding, Hannah and I have been meeting more frequently. Over time, I started to have feelings for Hannah. She was kind and intelligent, but being with Malcolm had taken a toll on her self-esteem. We discussed our marriages and what we had been through, realizing that we had a lot in common. Malcolm had become suspicious of Hannah constantly going out and had started having her followed, which forced us to cancel our meetings. That scoundrel wanted both Janet and Hannah. Out of fear that Hannah might be with someone else, he had locked her in the house. Until the wedding day, we only communicated through phone calls. I told her to record situations like these and send them to the lawyers. According to the feedback I received from the lawyers, Hannah would win the case. However, Malcolm was so focused on the wedding plans that he didn't even realize he would lose the case. The trial was scheduled to conclude in a month, and during this time, I learned that Janet had a substantial debt to a man from another city. I sent Malcolm the news in an anonymous envelope. I wanted to distract them and didn't want Janet to have peaceful moments after all she had done. A few days later, I heard that Janet and Malcolm were having a fight, but Malcolm left to resolve it with his money. At that time, I went to Hannah's house to pick her up and take her with me. Malcolm returned a week later, just a couple of days before the wedding. He couldn't find Hannah at home and was trying to contact her in the background. I told Janet to ask Malcolm why he was looking for Hannah. Let them bicker with each other until the wedding day, because the real surprise would be then. Hannah and I did our shopping for the wedding together. The court case concluded and the wedding day arrived. Janet's family, friends, and Malcolm's wealthy circle were all present at the wedding. The ceremony was underway, and just as the marriage was about to be sealed, Hannah and I interrupted the wedding. Malcolm was furious. Everyone was in shock as Hannah presented the divorce papers, explaining that she was seizing Malcolm's assets. Another surprise was that we attended the wedding in wedding attire. Janet looked anxious and tearful, and Malcolm had attempted to attack me out of anger, but people held him back. Hannah and I went to the marriage registry office. Seeing how compatible we were amidst all these events, we realized we could be happy together. I thought we could be very happy. However, after a month of marriage, Hannah became uneasy and unhappy. Before I could understand what was happening, she left a note and some money, and she was gone. In the note, she expressed that being together wasn't working out, and she wanted to live her own life, among other things, and here I am, sitting alone at home, abandoned once again. Update 1. I was trying to pull myself together, not understanding why Hannah had left me. After Janet was done with Malcolm, she tried to reach out to me. She told lies about how remorseful she was and how much she missed me, but I knew that nothing that came out of her mouth could be true. Janet said she could tell me where Hannah was if I gave her a substantial amount of money. I couldn't comprehend how she had learned this and how she could be so greedy. I asked for some time to think. There had to be a reason for Hannah to leave. Even if I found her, she might not want to return and everything would be in vain. I called Janet and told her I couldn't give her that much money, then hung up. The next day, Janet showed up at my door. She asked for a small amount of money because she claimed to be broke. I agreed, and Janet pulled an envelope from her bag telling me she found it in Malcolm's room. It seemed that Malcolm was still after Hannah. I needed to help Hannah. I immediately booked a ticket to the city where she lived. While on my way to her house, I saw Hannah on the street and her belly had swelled. Since I knew there was nothing between us, it had to be Malcolm's child. That was why she had run away from me. I approached Hannah, took her by the arm, and told her that we needed to go home and talk. When we got home, Hannah was angry at me for following her and not giving her space. I told her that Malcolm had hired someone to follow her and that she was being watched. Malcolm was a big jerk, and if it was about money, there was no way he would let Hannah go. Hannah was horrified. I assured her that I could take care of the child and that she wouldn't get anywhere by running away. We packed her things and returned to my place. We started decorating a room in the house as a nursery for the baby, ensuring that the house was baby-proofed. When Malcolm learned that Hannah had returned to me, he started sending threatening messages constantly. I hadn't mentioned these threats to Hannah because I didn't want her to be anxious or frightened. One day, when Hannah went to the hospital, a man bumped into her and pushed her. Malcolm was losing his temper, and it was getting on my nerves. Update 2. I managed to get in touch with Malcolm and arranged to meet him a few days later on a back street. I told him to leave Hannah alone and stay away from my marriage. Malcolm chuckled and said he wanted his money, or else he would never leave us alone. I was getting furious and attempted to attack him, but Malcolm's security guards were standing nearby and they held me back while beating me up. Malcolm also threatened to beat up Hannah the same way if I didn't give him the money. They left me there, and I was in a lot of pain, not knowing what to do. If I went back home, I had no idea how to explain this situation. First, I went to the hospital for treatment. Then, I called Hannah and told her that I couldn't come home today due to a work-related issue. I was thinking deeply in a hotel room. I had a lot of questions in my mind. Should I give him all my money? And what if he didn't leave us alone afterward? If I didn't give it to him, would he continue to act this way? In the early morning, I left the hotel and went home. I told Hannah that we needed to pack up and leave immediately. At first, Hannah didn't understand what was happening, but when she saw my injuries, she realized. Suddenly, she stopped and said, "We can't keep running like this." I knew that, but I couldn't think of any other solution. Hannah didn't want to run, and her pregnancy was quite advanced. We were only about 3 months away from the due date. She suggested that she could give most of the money she received from the divorce to Malcolm. If we recorded the exchange, we could potentially send Malcolm to jail, and that way, we wouldn't have to live in fear anymore. We agreed to deliver the money to Malcolm and told him we would meet at a location he shared. Over the next few days, we visited various banks to collect the money because we couldn't withdraw it all in one place. Update 3. I spoke to my childhood friend who was a police officer about turning Malcolm over to the police directly. I told him about the threats we received, the constant attacks on my wife, and that my wife's ex-husband was behind it, even asking us for money. My friend Jason said he would help. On the day of the meeting, they arrived before us and would be on duty. Hannah was very tense. She was terrified of anything happening to the baby. After preparing the money and getting dressed, we set out and headed to the meeting point. Jason was there and assured us that he would protect us. Malcolm had arrived before us and was waiting. When he saw us, a vile smile appeared on his face. We got out of the car and Malcolm's gaze was fixed on Hannah. When he saw that Hannah was pregnant, the smile on his face turned into an ugly mix of jealousy and anger. Before discussing the money, Malcolm turned to me and commented on how Hannah's pregnancy was a miracle, given that Hannah was a useless woman. He was trying to provoke me once again. I told Malcolm that Hannah was my concern now, and he had no right to comment or speak about her. I made it clear that he was nothing but a stalker from the past. I threw the money in front of him and tried to get him to stop threatening us. Malcolm lost control of his temper and started shouting. These simple threats escalated into him claiming that he would torture us every day and make Hannah lose her child. He continued to spew such sentences. While Malcolm was talking, Jason intervened and arrested him. Malcolm didn't even realize what was happening. I put Hannah in the car and approached Malcolm. I turned off the recording devices and told Malcolm that if he ever pursued us again, I wouldn't spare his life. Update 4. Malcolm had been arrested, and I thought we were finally free from all the troubles. However, Hannah's water broke, and she was going into premature labor. We were extremely worried about the baby, and I rushed to get Hannah to the hospital. They rushed Hannah to emergency cesarean delivery at the hospital, while I anxiously waited outside. Hannah didn't come out that night, and I was waiting anxiously. Jason came to me to offer support. The doctor said the baby was born before it was fully ready, resulting in respiratory issues, and Hannah needed to stay in intensive care for a while. I felt shattered when I heard this news. Jason was holding me, and I couldn't regain my composure for a long time. These events were the result of Hannah's age and the stress she had been through. I wished I could have protected Hannah better. I started visiting Hannah and the baby after work. The baby was a girl, but I hadn't even given her a name yet. I was hoping Hannah would wake up soon. The doctor said it might be challenging for the baby to make it past 1 or 2 years. I didn't know how to tell Hannah when she woke up. Jason kept me informed about the legal proceedings. Malcolm had been found guilty by the court, and due to his prior offenses, he would have to give a hefty fine and have to serve few years in prison. Jason also mentioned that they hadn't found enough evidence to catch Janet, who was apparently behind these events. Janet was like a cunning snake, as always. While Jason and I were discussing all of this, Hannah started to regain consciousness. We had a conversation at first to help her settle down. She asked about our baby. I told her that once she was feeling a bit better, she could go and see the baby herself. At least she wouldn't have to face bad news as soon as she recovered. A week passed and Hannah was getting better. I felt it was time to talk with her. Hannah sat down with a worried look on her face, and I explained to her that our baby might not make it past 1 or 2 years due to premature birth and other factors that had negatively impacted her development. Hannah was devastated, and we went to see our baby together. Hannah had named her Arya. We were waiting anxiously behind the glass.